Social Security and Medicare. Both of these critical entitlement programs are projected to be defunct in the near future. What measures do you support to ensure long-term viability of these programs?
Let's add some more with
Okay.
that.
Okay. Okay.
One of the things with Medicare that we've been startled to learn, and again, it's just my first term in Washington, but to hear more of the information that keeps coming out, and if it were easy to fix, we would have fixed it long before now, is waste and fraud. Waste and fraud is between 40 and 80 billion with a B, $1 billion a year. I don't think people across America understood the magnitude of what the problem is, how much waste and fraud. Now they say if it were easy, we would have fixed it. Okay, so I'm taking my business experience and trying to apply it to the circumstance. And it makes it very interesting because I know people have said, interesting concept, why didn't we think of it? And that is, we have what's called in Washington, and it's been going for decades, is called pay and chase. If you're a healthcare provider, all you do is bill Medicare and you get a check. There is no confirmation. It's just, you get a check. After a period of whether it's months or years, the audit will come, but not to everyone. Now, will come look to find out, did you provide that service? And what they're finding all across America, particularly in certain states, that there is no such doctor. That was a post office box. And this is so infuriating to any of us coming from the business sector. In the construction industry, there's no way we would ever have authorized a payment to a contractor until we confirmed that the work had been performed. Why are we doing the same thing? So what we're talking about in Medicare is setting up some satellite programs around the country where we have a confirm and pay. You can send your bill in. We will confirm back that you've indeed performed that service, and then you get your check. But you don't pay them and then confirm later because we're finding out too many places around the country there is no such person. It's so huge. We're talking about $500–600 billion a year in Medicare services. So people have been able to find out how to get 40 to 80 of it incorrectly. I think that's going to be one of the better things that we can do, is start a system where we confirm before we pay. But we're going to have to do it apparently on a trial basis first.
And some of the ideas that are being thrown out. One idea is to privatize Social Security. You know, let people take their money and invest it in the stock market or whatever. The problem with that is that there are no guaranteed benefits. That if you make the wrong investments, you will face your retirement and not have the money necessary. You know, Social Security has been able to provide for generations of Americans. It is a guaranteed program. It is a program that everyone contributes into and then draws out of. One of the things that would really stabilize Social Security would be to raise the cap for contributions. Right now, any income earned after $110,000 does not need to have any Social Security taken out of that. I think that could be raised and would help Social Security for decades in the future. But we also need, part of securing Social Security has to do with getting people back to work and actually contributing in to Social Security. And that's why we immediately need to get people back in the job force, back into the middle class where they're making contributions. Medicare is a, can I start just with Medicare?
Just start with Medicare, sure.
Okay. Medicare is such an important program here in West Virginia and throughout the United States. I have heard recent comments being made having to do with the Ryan budget, in which we would take Medicare and turn it into a voucher program. And basically, what would happen is seniors would be given a voucher to go out and buy their own private insurance. And then that would be who would be providing the health care. I do not agree with that. I was talking recently as I was knocking doors in one of the counties here in the 1st District and speaking with a nurse. and she was talking about what is happening with Medicare as it becomes more and more managed. That while your doctor, when they're releasing you from the hospital, might say that you need 3 days a week of therapy and restorative treatment, you know, an insurance company can decide that no, we really only want to pay for 2 days a week. And that is something that we have not had a problem with in Medicare, that people with a traditional Medicare have gotten the services they needed and been able to get the treatments in order to get them better. I think what happens sometimes when we privatize people's medical care is that it is then done for a profit. And what happens, which is very unfortunate, is that people don't get the treatment they need at the time, which ends up costing us more in the long run. So I think that we need to protect Medicare, the existing traditional Medicare, and one of the ways of expanding and actually making it more financially sound is to actually start including younger people. If you go to where you're only including people as they get older and older, you're getting people who are then going to be needing more and more care. In any program, just as I said with the health insurance, is the more you can open up the market and have healthier people in it, the more viable it is. And I think that's one of the things that we could be doing to strengthen a very important program, which is Medicare.
Americans are experiencing an ever-increasing rising cost of all forms of energy. Do you support the creation of a national energy policy? And what should it entail, in your opinion?
Again, the realization when I got there, we have no national manufacturing policy. We have no national immigration policy. We have no national energy policy. And as anyone understands from the business side, it's the uncertainty. What's going to happen when a new president's elected? He comes in with a different energy perspective. So the energy policies change. And then the next president gets elected and they change back again to someplace else. This has to stop. We need a national energy policy, period. And one that includes fossil fuels. And it's obvious in this administration that this president does not support the fossil fuel industry as part of the long-term solution for our energy independence. So after reading, studying, watching what was happening in Washington, interacting with some of the other congressmen, we put a draft together for that very part. So I'm going to leave that with you as well. We have a national energy policy that we're trying to craft a commission where they have to report back within 2 years of a formalized long-term national energy policy. Now it's not in its final state. These are in, that's what I'm saying, this is a working document. And I'd like nothing better than for you all, give me your interaction with it as well as to how we might involve enough people around the country to having one policy that we can count on. It doesn't change from administration to administration, and most importantly for us in West Virginia, that it includes coal, oil, and gas. We've got to make sure that those are part of it. And that part of the frustration was they had the Human Events just came out with an article in today's paper, and it reinforced how the president does not. The Interior Secretary Ken Salazar, when he talked about this administration, he says, for all the above. And then he listed oil, gas, nuclear, hydro, biofuel, wind, geothermal. No coal. And that just further reinforces what we've been saying all along, where the president has said that in the coal industry, if you want to build a new coal-fired generating plant, you can do that, but the taxes are going to bankrupt you. We have his Secretary Chu, his leading man of energy across this country, has said coal is his worst nightmare. Now, he may want to think that and may believe that. That's why we have to have a national energy policy that includes coal, because then he can't make his personal ideology driven into it. Coal is going to be part of our national energy policy, and it's got to be a big cornerstone with it.
I can't say that I would support that plan unless I knew what was actually going to be involved in a national energy plan. I think if we do develop something like that, we have to be looking both at what the existing resources are and protecting the now current resources, while also determining what we will be doing in the future. we need to protect, you know, the jobs that are in coal mining, because right now coal is a valuable resource we have. But we're also seeing where gas is now becoming, you know, more prominent and is taking over more of the energy market. And we have to be ready, especially here in West Virginia, to be able to move with the needs in the energy sector. That while we are going to protect our coal mining jobs, we also need to be prepared. And I think that's one way we also can engage young people in determining how do we prepare, how do we come up with new energy sources. I think our universities are a great way to promote those types of jobs, because it's not simply protecting the people who are working now, but we need to think of our sons and our daughters and our grandchildren. I think we need to put our resources in figuring out where do we go, how do we have a solid energy plan that is also secure for this nation, that we are not dependent on foreign entities in order to provide for our energy needs. But I do think that West Virginians who have a tradition of being the miners of coal and the drillers of oil and those who have experience in the glass industry very much could be the miners and the drillers and the developers of future energy needs. And it would be in West Virginia's future to be able to outline what those are and how do we get our workforce ready for those.
What is the primary message that you want to get out to voters?
When we have $16 trillion in debt, we have 23 million people out of work across America or underemployed. This is all the more time where we better have people with a business sense that understand the economy in positions of authority in Washington. This is not a time for ideologues, either Republican or Democrats on this. We've got to get people back to work. We've got to have some balance in the structure. So what I've found since I've been in Washington, I'm only one of 2 engineers in all of out of 435 in the House and 100 in the Senate. There are only 2 licensed engineers in all of Washington, all of Congress. Our training gives us a different perspective. We can deal with science. We can deal with business. We understand energy. Those are things that are going to be important to us. Secondly, the National Federation of Independent Businesses came out with a study and said, out of all 535 of you, only 48 of us in Congress have a small business background. 48. Now, I say this somewhat tongue-in-cheek, and it's not meant, but there are 242 attorneys. Now, as Seinfeld said, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just want people to understand that there has to be some balance. It's not all legal. It's about common sense. How are we going to get our people back to work? How are we going to restore confidence? How are we going to eliminate the uncertainty? How are we going to keep coal part of our fabric of this economy in West Virginia and this nation? Because we burn coal in 48 of the 50 states, but yet there are people out there trying to put us out of business. So I'm saying this is a time to keep businessmen, and I hope we can find more. I'm not looking to be just one of a handful. We need to get more business people involved in this process, to step out of their comfort zones and get involved in this. But it's not pleasant. It's not something that I look forward to every day, because you're called hypocrites, you're called liars, you're threatened. We don't need this. I had a wonderful life. I was being able to be with my wife every night, my grandchildren, but this country was in trouble. And I was willing to step out of my comfort zone to be one of just a handful of businessmen to go to Washington to try to make a difference. And I'm going to try, but I'm going to represent both people, both sides of any argument in Congress. I'm not going to be just a Republican and not just a conservative. I'm going to make sure that we're listening to everyone. In all 20 counties, we're going to listen to all those issues and we're going to make a difference. But we come to it with 47 years of business experience. And it's going to play out, I think, very well. We're already seeing the level of activity that we've been able to accomplish in my first year. We're getting bills passed out of the House. I now have 15 amendments that I've had attached to legislation because I know how to do this process, and it makes common sense. So I really would appreciate people's support, be able to keep a business perspective, because right now this country needs to have that with the debt and the unemployment issues that we have before us. So thank you all very much for having me here today.
It is very simple. It is the reason that people throughout the 1st District drafted me to run, because people said, we want somebody in Congress who will fight for middle-class Americans, who will fight for working people. And that is by far the message of my campaign. You know, I don't want to see senior citizens being faced with whether or not to eat cat food rather than to take so that they can afford their medication. I don't want our veterans returning home and, you know, ending up living under bridges, unemployed, you know, having serious health care issues, and often turning to suicide as the resolution. We need to be taking care of our returning veterans. We also need to be educating our children. I think that the country is the strongest when we have people in this country who have the opportunity to get the education they need for their future. I think the idea of burdening students with huge education loans in order to be able to prepare for the jobs of the future is not in any way helping our country. I think we need to be taking care of our children at young ages and making sure that every family has affordable health care. Parents have jobs in which they have the benefits of having health care, having retirement offered to them. As I look around the 1st District, I see areas like the Northern Panhandle, where RG Steel now has declared bankruptcy, and it looks like many of their retirees, you know, not just the union workers, but also their management workers, are finding themselves in their 60s, 70s, and 80s being told they no longer have the health care that they were guaranteed that they would have. They don't have the life insurance. I look then at other parts of the 1st District in which Patriot Coal is now filing for bankruptcy and trying to do that in New York because they think that they won't have to answer to the needs of the workers and the retirees in the coal fields. I don't think that should be allowed. You know, where coal companies have made their profits in certain areas of the country, that's where they need to be dealing with the workers. I am angry about companies that decide that what they need to do is have somebody from the outside come in, executives come in who get millions of dollars, burden the companies with debt, bankrupt them, and who is left paying the price at the end? It's our current workers, and it's our current retirees, and it's people in the future. We have got to stop feeling that profit is superior to workers and what happens with workers. I also believe and very strongly feel that if you say you're a friend of coal, it can't simply mean you're a friend of coal barons, but that you are really a friend of coal miners. I see myself in that area. I am thrilled to be drafted by people in the 1st District to fight for them, and I look forward to being in Congress, and I would appreciate your vote.